Welcome back, everybody, to Meeting 7. I hope your last week, ever since we saw y'all on Tuesday, was great. New faces, awesome to see. Same faces, also awesome. I'm going to pass the mic and the stage to our guest today, Professor Lieberman. He's going to be talking about customer dev and everything customer dev. It's going to be awesome. He has asked me to tell y'all that at any point in this conversation and his presentation, feel free to unmute and ask your question out loud. Don't drop it in chat so we can open discourse type deal. So yeah, don't be shy and just yeah, let's get going. So I'll let the introduction to you, Professor Lieberman, and I will allow you to screen share as well.
Perfect. All right. Well, great to meet you all. A couple of you are in my class, so maybe this will be a review for some of the stuff we've talked about. So quick thing about me, I teach entrepreneurship, marketing, and sales courses at Cal Poly. I went to Cal Poly and graduated too many years ago to mention, but so I am a Cal Poly grad and am a serial entrepreneur. I've done a number of different companies, involved in a startup now. I also spent some time in corporate world. So the first decade of my life was at corporate. I was at Hewlett Packard at the time that we were just building the Silicon Valley. It wasn't called the Silicon Valley. Computers, PCs, laptops were invented while I was there. And we were one of the first companies to do all of that. Then I went to another company that started the whole idea behind what's called value-added distribution. Basically, the sales forces that work really to help sell software solutions to businesses. And then I started a marketing firm that was the first of its kind. We didn't know it at the time. It was a demand generation. 4 high-tech companies, worked with all of the same big companies that you've heard of: Microsoft, Oracle, Hewlett Packard, IBM, Sun, pretty much almost everybody but Apple. And mainly in the software, and really launched a lot of Salesforce, et cetera, launched a lot of these companies, and then sold that company, started another one that was kind of a predecessor to digital marketing called around drip marketing, and sold that company, and then got involved with working a lot with startups, both as an investor, as an advisor, and then also working with mid-sized companies as what's called today an interim executive. So basically I'd come in a couple of days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, to a company and help them launch products or launch the company or move them forward from being stuck in a customer development or a customer care environment. And that's been my career. And then a few years ago, I got crazy at the ripe old age of 59 and went back to school and got a master's degree. So don't ever think it's too late to make changes. So that I could officially start teaching. I had been mentoring and co-speaking and doing everything you could, but actually own the classroom at UCI, Cal State Fullerton, and Chapman University for about 10, 12 years, and finally decided it's time for me to get into the classroom full-time or part-time and teach. And so the last couple of years I've been doing that, and a friend of mine runs the CIE, and he said, come on up here and teach at Cal Poly. And so last year I commuted until COVID hit 3 days a week. And here I am. So now we're doing this. And currently I'm Chief Marketing Officer for Everything Food, which you'll hear about today. So the one thing I would say to you about your careers, don't worry about it. Don't worry. I say this all the time. Your career is going to take changes. And actually in today's world, and especially for entrepreneurs, you got to take what you want to be doing, be as flexible. Look at everything as a project. Look at everything as opportunity. Never say never. My career, and I won't bore you with the story, take my class and you'll hear all about it, is that your career will go in directions you never thought of. And every single person I bring in as a guest speaker are serial entrepreneurs, some of which are like one of the guys that we had in last week runs Disney Plus. He's the guy who put the news feed into the feed at Facebook, big player, Cal Poly grad. He says the same thing. We never would have expected my career. He was an ITP major at Cal Poly, ends up running, making big changes at MySpace, at Vivo, at Facebook, and at Disney. So you never know. So main thing now is just look at every single opportunity you can to learn. And the reason I bring all that up is customer development is a huge subject, impossible to cover in an hour. impossible to cover in 10 weeks. The Intro to Entrepreneurship class is really all about customer development. And some of us, like myself, who've been in business for 40 years, spend an entire lifetime. So the essence of business, the essence of entrepreneurship is the customer. And so with that, I'll bring up some slides. Interrupt me. I got, like most professors, too many slides and way too much to talk about in the time allotted. So interrupt me. We can go with the flow. I got stuff to share with you from what we're doing, Everything Food, and we'll just kind of roll with it. Okay, so with that, I'll share my screen. Please interrupt and ask questions, and we'll have a much better time at this. So let me first do this, press a few buttons here. Slideshow. And now it's bouncing around. Should go over there. Sorry, my screens are not the normal numbers. There we go. Okay. Just let me know, thumbs up if you see something that says Entrepreneurs Club and Entrepreneurship and a graph. Cool. So the reason I like this, and we'll talk, is really entrepreneurship is about a number of things, and we'll talk about this curve here. It's about really all about trying to find product market fit, and that is the key, the holy grail. Product market fit means that you have customers, the market, and the product match. If you don't have product market fit, you never ever scale. Your business will eventually fail because it comes down to customers wanting your product, and it's not what you want to sell, it's what they want to buy. So we'll get into that. It's also about constantly experimenting and validating until you hit this point here, and then it's about systems and processes, and we won't talk about any of this yet, and that's more of an operations management course. So testing your ideas, failing fast, that's the holy grail. So all of this is about test. And those of you that are from STEM know that it's the scientific process. Come up with a hypothesis, build an experiment, get out there and and find the results, iterate and do it again. Okay. And then the business model canvas, I'm sure you've heard about, we're going to talk about these areas today. So with that said, let's kind of go to the basics around customer development or even building a business, and really what it's all about. So the first thing is customers don't buy ideas. So when you're sitting there thinking, I'm thinking of being an entrepreneur, I've got some ideas, and you're already in the solution space, you're too far. We don't buy as customers ideas. Okay, what we do buy is based on emotion. Every single purchase, no matter how analytical you are, is an emotional decision. And you have to get in touch with your customer, and your value proposition all has to be based around what's the emotion you're trying to solve for the customer. I go over this, for weeks and weeks in class and in business, we talk about it all the time and what we're doing, Everything Food. And it really comes down to that we're emotional beings. We make decisions that way, and everything we do is to solve an emotional need. So think that way, think outside in, okay? And your great idea has got to be inspired by your customer's emotions. What does that mean? Again, the same thing. The customer is going to, when you solve a emotional issue for them or help them move forward, that's what people are willing to pay for, whether it's vanity, whether it's frustration, whether it's the desire to get ahead, whether it's solving convenience factors. All of those things are emotionally driven, and your business has to satisfy that need, and your product has to satisfy that need. So you start with the problem you're solving and the emotion you're trying to solve, and we'll talk about that a bit more. So keep in your mind that if you aren't clear on that emotion that you're taking care of and who it is you're doing it for, your business won't succeed. So basically 99% of businesses fail because they don't have a product that matches a market need. They build products or ideas that nobody wants. And if nobody wants to pay for it or to take time with it, if it's a nonprofit, you're not going to go anywhere. So with that, all decisions are emotionals. We make purely rational decisions. Without emotions, we cannot make decisions. In class, we go through, listen to a video about a man who had a tumor. When they took out his tumor, he lost his main emotional functioning. And he could not make any decisions. His entire life went to ruin after this because he couldn't even figure out what pen to use or what pencil. You know, your body, we think that emotions get in the way of decisions, and it's quite the opposite. We can't, the final stage of a decision is always emotional. You weigh all the facts, you figure out what's going on, what's the ration, you weigh it all down, and eventually you make a decision based upon what is that last thing that pushes you over and says, I'm going that way. So were products to be successful, you know, and who gets a job, it's an emotional influence. As somebody who's been hiring people for 40 years, well, I'd say 35 of those 40 years, I've been in a management role, maybe longer. At the end of the day, when we decide to hire somebody, it's based on cultural fit. 2/3 of the decisions based on a cultural fit, and 1/3 will be based on their skills. Because typically, if somebody has the basic skills, the decision between who you hire, if you've done a good job of recruiting, is going to come down to who's the best fit for the team. And that's an emotional decision. So the same with buying products. It's the same with how you select people, which is the second most important part of building a business. So your success depends on how well you understand and fulfill other people's emotional needs, not yours. So I'm going to pause there for a minute because that always gets people wondering, what the heck is this guy rambling on about? And what it also does is it makes you have to stop and think. You start with the problem and the emotional problem you're solving. You do not start with the solution or the product. So most people get it backwards, and that's why most businesses fail. Businesses succeed, solve a problem for, and we'll talk about this in a minute, early adopters, people that have a need, and they'll tell you exactly what to build. So with that said, any questions? Anybody want to challenge that? Or are you thinking of a particular idea you have now and you can run it past me, and in a couple of minutes I can, give you some thoughts on it? No? Okay. I can keep going, but really I don't really want to do another lecture. I get to do that for 4 hours tomorrow, and Chris and Alexandra have to sit through 2 hours of that. And suffer with it. So I'd rather not do it now. But it's cool, especially those that already have a business. Feel free to weigh in and say what you're doing, and I'll be honest and give you a critique. So any point. So let me keep going. Then we're good to go.
I have one question. If you're open to.
Yeah. What's up?
I just thought of this question. If you are interested in making an app for students, and you feel like your friends would maybe be like a biased responder to like a survey that you like gave it to them, or like you asked them questions, how would you suggest to go about that? Like, how would you really know if someone else is facing the same struggle that your app is designed to carry? Like, try to decide that.
So first thing is,
help with.
I'm going to challenge, why are you building an app? How do you know an app's the right solution? How do you know it's not just a browser-based website? How do you know it's a digital solution at all? The only way you know that is you have to go to your marketplace. You're right, not to your friends, not to your family. Everybody goes there, but you got to figure out who specifically are you solving the problem for, and what that means is, and we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. Matter of fact, I'll just jump ahead to it, and we can come back to this other point. What's called a product adoption curve, and this will help answer your question. So the way products move, and then Facebook's is an example here, but we can talk about any business, literally. I even can tell you about the business that I just learned about today that we might be partnering at Everything Food. So the idea is innovators are basically the lifeblood of what happens with products. And there's very few inventions, and inventors typically are not entrepreneurs. An innovation means that you take a current problem that's being solved with a current solution, and you come up with a better solution. And an early adopter are the first people. They're the people who have a really, 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 really strong emotional need for something and it's not being fulfilled. The problem's not being solved. They're looking for solutions right now. They're going crazy trying to find the solution. Nothing's satisfying that solution, and they'll try anything. That's how desperate they are. And once they find that solution, they're going to start telling everybody. And these are the people this is the place where you have to search for when you're building product. So to answer your question, you start with the problem that you're solving. You go find who are these people that are acutely desperate, that nothing's satisfying their need, and that they're willing to invest time and money in, right? And those are the people that you test your idea against. And those are the people that, from them, that you'll learn what's the best way to present your solution. And when they do satisfy their needs, this isn't where profit is made. They'll start telling the rest of the world. This is where virality always comes from, is the early adopters. So I to help you that answer, it's don't go to friends and family. Don't think app. Go to go to the place that has the problem and further define. It's called problem definition and problem validation. That's the first phase, which is back here. You search. This is what you're doing in the beginning. You're searching for what's called problem solution fit. This is what happens first, and then you iterate and test, and then as you start seeing you're finding getting to the right people, then what happens is, how do you figure out the language to communicate properly? Because once you get the language, and that's called the marketing message, that's called branding, to fit, you'll start seeing a little bit more growth and a little bit more virality. And you keep testing, and then you start trying to find, well, where is it that we can get it to that would cross over, and those early adopters start talking and spreading the word. Word of mouth marketing, virality. Virality is a newer term. It's not even that new, 10, 12 years, but word of mouth has been around for 50 years. That is the number one way. Referrals, all of those cases where people are so enthused about a solution that they're telling the world. When you hit this right, and I'll go back here, people will, if you get it right, people will start talking about what you're doing before you even present your solution. That's when you know you've hit on something. Rarely happens. Usually you have to get the solution, and then you have to keep testing and testing. And if you're doing it right, failing fast and constantly and listening well to the market, you can find product market fit. They start talking about it, and you start figuring out what's causing them to talk more and more about it. You start encouraging them. You have you get spokespeople that are really enthusiastic. You become product experts. You get user groups, and they spread the word and help. And then you start getting into what's called the late adopter, or the early majority, which is where the money is made. So let me come back to you for a second, because that was a very long-winded answer. Did I help you there? The whole point is, don't start with the end. The end, start with, which is the solution. You start with the problem. Focus on the problem and get to those people. You don't have to show them a prototype or anything. In class, we teach people how to go out with questioning. We'll talk about that today, before anything's even built. And I'll show you a quick video, when I'm going to get to in a couple minutes, where it's a focus group where the moderator actually gets the people to start drawing what the website should look like for them before it even exists. Okay, so the holy grail is in getting a business off the ground is getting a problem that matches to these early adopters. And these basically it's market fit. It's finding those people and where they have this emotional need, it's not being solved, and nothing satisfied it. And when we get into Q&A in a little bit, that's where I'd really like you to test your guys' thoughts and assumptions of what you're thinking about as entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs or ideas, to see, okay, what I'll be trying to figure out is, what's the emotion tied to it? Who's the early adopters? That's, as people in the class can tell you, it's challenging, but it is the way, because it really gets to a situation where you actually end up building the product. And when it comes out, you've already got a ready-made market, people ready to pay for it, and they've been waiting to pay for it and then dying to use it. And some of them would have been your testers, already been using it. And that's when you really hit the right mark. Any other questions?
Yes, I've got one. How many people would you typically recommend to have as early adopters? Like how aggressively do you want to scale that group?
So the best thing is always go as small as you can. You're a startup. You have very little resources, right? Even if you get funded for $2 million, you can burn that really fast. trying to find product market fit. So the idea is the size of a initial early adopter group should be 10 people. It's a small, really tight group. As you refine things, you'll find that they'll start wanting to bring other people in. They'll start wanting to tell people, if you're doing it right, if you're refining, if you're shaping it, if you're failing with them, you may sometimes say, well, maybe this 10, you start finding out maybe that's not the right group, and you're seeing there's a different market and they're helping you figure that out. Or sometimes what happens, and generally what happens, is you start finding out there's a different problem that's even bigger that needs to be solved. And you start adjusting to that. Okay.
Cool.
So you have to, so the size, the smaller, the better, so you can really get your arms around it. I have to admit, with what we've been doing, Everything Food, and when you see the numbers, we didn't do that. I didn't have the opportunity to get them to think small. Can you hold on 1 second? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyways, so if I had been involved earlier, we would have started much, much smaller. But we have a huge idea, and we're working with the biggest marketplace in the world. So it's really hard to get small when you're dealing with food. But David, the idea is start as small as you can. You'll be surprised. And it's so much easier to pivot and change and iterate when it's small like that.
Sure.
And also you're not burning, too many resources too fast.
Right on. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the early majority, this is where you start making money. So, but you cannot get to those people. You can't get to them because the definition of the early majority is that you meet a lot of people who really do like to be on the cutting edge, but they still won't be the first in. They're going to wait for you to get it. So like, hey, man, this has got the coolest technology, that's the coolest, new electric car and stuff. I think it's really cool. Or it's a new phone or whatever that gadget is, or new app, right? And you're like, did you check it out? Yeah, I checked it out. Wow. Are you using it? No, I'm not using it. Oh man. Well, when you start using it, let me know, right? They're not going to be first in. The early adopter the problem is so acute. They're going to be first in, and they're the one who's going to start bringing in a whole bunch of people. You can look at, again, we're talking about Facebook, let me go back to that. It's interesting because, right, that's not the tool that you guys are involved with, but it started with you. It started with college students, right? It started with just at Harvard, and it went to just from the students at Harvard to slowly into 4 universities. That got it up to a whopping 2,000 people, and they stayed there for a long time. What scaled them is they started getting more and more schools. And why did other schools come on? Why did Penn State come on after Harvard? Because people at Harvard went home, told their friends, and their friends were like, we want that. And they were at other universities. That's how it grew. So when they realized that, we got to keep adding universities because people at these universities keep wanting to come on because they're hearing about it from their friends from the last place. So it was all through because they found their early adopters who went and told other people. And then they had to go get money to scale to keep up with that, right? And then the early majority came on, which is a lot of the universities and the students. But what started coming later is parents started getting on. Why? Because they were following their kids onto it. Meanwhile, the kids, and I don't mean that disparagingly, right? The younger generation were moving off of it to something else, Snap, Instagram, and which is one of the reasons that Facebook bought Instagram, was because they saw that trend. So then what happens is, now the majority of users on Facebook are over 40, 45 as far as their daily users. Happens to be good for the business because they spend a lot of money. Advertisers like to get to them. So the big money came here, right? And you guys, as the initial, you guys being students, and left the platform years ago, yet it's still, as much as people don't realize, it's still thriving. It's a huge business, right? And this is what's so important to understand, is that the early adopters typically don't even end up being the big end users who make you the money. They're the ones who get you launched and get you word of mouth virality. They bring down your marketing and growth costs and bring you to the people who are going to spend the money. because it's a proven solution, and they're being referred in by people they honestly believe in. So the key behind it is find that early adopter group, get them involved as soon as possible. Start small, and if it's working, you'll start to see the growth from them, and then you'll start figuring out the formula on how to accelerate that viral growth. So those are a good place to stop. I wanted to talk about a little bit about everything food, and I'll shift kind of a little bit back and forth from that. And also want to make it a time check here. So any questions? Boring? Not so? It's good. Is this good information? Okay. Like it or not, you're stuck with me for another 25, 30 minutes. So, okay. So what is Everything Food? And you can check out everythingfood.com, and I'm going to tell you about where it started and where it is, and we're actually about to do a pivot. We're not about to do, we are doing it. So our vision, so we start off with what's called Simon Sinek's theory of why, what your why, how, and what is. And you have to know your why. You can look Simon Sinek up. It's a very famous TED Talk. So basically our vision is to provide our vision still is, an easy to understand, deep information resource empowers people to make informed food choices. And I won't read you the whole thing. You can read it here. The whole point, our big why, is to help improve health worldwide. And food is fundamental. And how we reach that vision, at least at that stage here, was providing consumers tools to become more food conscious, and through food knowledge, empower them to make better food choices and to give them access to that food. So we built a website and a database that has over 1.5 million items with deeper information than any other food database in the world, and a quality scoring system. And we have been testing the ability for people to then access that food from supermarkets in their area or have it shipped direct. So that's what Everything Food what is about at the stage of probably 2019. We did build a business model canvas. It helped us to understand that we're actually a platform. So when you build a platform, that's a completely different canvas than this, because you started realizing that we have a multi-sided platform. In other words, we have 4 different types of customers, so we had to be bigger than it became a little big. So the whole thing behind this is what you saw here is you look at this and say, wow, there's a lot of stuff there. But there's reduced frustration with choosing the right brands to eat, ease the pain of food deserts, right? So there's emotion here, right? Empowerment, right? Improve the quality so people can make better choices. Our initial segments for people that love to cook, people that have voluntary dietary needs, fitness programs, keto, paleo, diabetes, cancer, or lifestyle choices. Way too much. And you'll see as we go, as I talk through this, that we've realized that, and actually our focus now is quite a bit more narrow. But we built a tool that is around this, and then here's the rest. So this kind of, if you have had a chance to gander at this, you'll see that if you're building a software company, which we are a software company, our focus is around food. We're a cause-based company, so you can see those things that are the activities that need to take place: software development, community building, user acquisition, engagement. That's the holy grail, right? That's when you found your early adopters, right? And all these activities around that. So most of this is customer development. And then who are the people involved in making that happen? And then who are the various partners? And this is questions. Maybe some of you are checking out the website. You can sign up. It's free. You can explore it. And you'll get a feel for where it is today. So I want to come back to this idea around problem validation. And the key to being able to validate a problem or determine if you have something that's going to work for people is learning how to do interviewing. This is the number one thing you have to learn, or your business has to learn. This is fundamental to marketing. This is fundamental to sales. And more importantly, this is fundamental any sort of product development and customer development is you have to be able to know how to go out and interview and talk and ask questions and lead a story, a conversation. It's not around pitching. Pitching is, you guys hate getting pitched. Everybody hates getting somebody coming up and being a salesman, right? And when you're developing your product, you're trying to figure out, solve a problem. You got to find out whether the problem's real, what people really think about it. You got to really dig deep. So you got to get really good. And the key to asking questions is really simple. It's around, I call it the 6 W's. Other people call it the 5. Who, what, when, where, why, with why being the most important, and how. You can have a conversation for hours and hours and hours with people, and you don't have to contribute at all except for asking the question, why? Where, what? And again, these are sessions, but think about it. If you want to learn and find out if you have an opportunity, you have to ask, the other person has to do all the talking, and you have to do all the listening. And to get people to talk, you have to ask questions. And if you want to be thought of as a very conversational person, just learn how to ask questions. People love to talk. No matter even how introverted a person is, you can get them to talk if you ask open-ended questions that start with a W or end with one. So this is key to everything you do with your business. You hear about get outside in thinking. You can't do it if you can't get out there and ask questions. And whether it's you or somebody, people on your team, or that you hire. And then you got to be able to listen. So listening, this is what most of us do. We'll either ignore, we're pretending, or we're being selective because we're on our own agenda. We're thinking about what the next question is, or we're thinking about the answer we want to hear. And what you have to learn how to do is, in listening, is the first step is learning how to listen to what was said to you and kind of paraphrase back to the person so that you can validate that you, to them and emotionally to them, that they were heard, and more importantly, that you got it right. And that also helps lead you to the next question. And it helps lead them to the next question, or many times they start talking. So it's more important when you're in this doing business and building a business to be a good listener than anything else. It's more important to be good at asking questions than pitching. As investors, we always say, oh, we're going to make, and I have some fundamental things that, as being an investor and heard this, is about around the pitch. So the only reason I want to hear a pitch or a pitch deck from somebody is to decide if I want to have a conversation. And then when I get to the point of a conversation with a startup, I judge them as much on the questions that they bring to me as than the questions that I ask them. And a really smart investor doesn't ask questions. They'll kick the conversation off and they'll say to you, and I do this, what questions do you have for me? How can I help you? And then I shut up. And what should come back is a bunch of questions for me. What resources can I provide? What is the thing? What do you know about the marketplace, et cetera, to get me into the conversation? But that's from an investor, and it's a different conversation, but everything is around the ability for you to ask questions and then listen. So the last part is empathetic listening. And that's the point where you're really trying to understand. It's not just reflect it back and understand the question, the answer, but really try to understand the emotion. When you get to the feeling, the emotion that's behind the answer, and you're not responding, you're not judging, you're asking another question, and you're peeling back the layers, you're going to get the story. And that's what you're trying to do, is get people to tell you their story, tell you all the gut reasons, all the reasons that whatever it is that the problem is really gets to them. And then what they'll end up doing is telling you how to solve it. Because when you listen, the answers will come to you. Because if you're asking, why doesn't what's out there work? Why isn't what we're doing not working? What is the reason that you're frustrated by this? And they're telling you what to go build. And then if you come back with it built, this is what we all do. You bring me back what I asked for, I'm going to buy it. It's very fundamental, but really hard to do. Okay. So I'm not going to do the exercise because we don't have time. But this is a great little exercise. We do it in the class where you just pair up and one person presents, picks a topic and makes a statement. The other person has to rephrase back what was said. Let's see if they get it right. It helps you with listening. And the other person then says, did they get it right or not? Right? And you just practice that. So you got to get good at running businesses. You have to really learn how to get to be a listener. If you want to study the best leaders, they're really good at asking you questions and why, and listening. And what that does is it empowers you and it empowers your team. And is therefore, as you're going to develop customers, you are hearing the customer, because that's all that matters. So I won't bore you with that. So I want to do this for a couple of minutes, just poke into this video for a couple of minutes. And then I'd kind of like to show you a couple of things, and then we'll see if we get some questions. We'll see if I can get this video up fast. Pretty sure, whoops, let me go back, that I had it queued up. Okay, so what I got to do is get to a certain time point. I want you to kind of listen to what a person says and how she redirects the line and then change the line of questioning, and how quickly, with just a simple listening and question, how much conversation comes about.
I can't pronounce it. I usually don't buy it.
Yeah. What does that mean when you say cleanest? What does that mean?
Let me go back. I started a little too late, I think.
Yes.
Ingredients, and I have to.
You guys hear it and see it? Okay.
So review ingredients, so it's the least number.
I need to recognize what it is.
Recognizable.
Cleanest, yeah, cleanest.
But I also have your rule of thumb. If I can't pronounce it, I usually don't buy it.
Yeah.
What does that mean when you say cleanest? What does that mean?
You know, it's like healthy. So if you're buying like a bar, like a granola bar or something, you don't want to have dextrobiotics.
CPE.
Yes, you know, if it has fruits, vegetables, fruits, nuts, things like that, then that's clean.
Okay.
You know, if it says honey, you know that's a single ingredient, not something that's got.
Hydrated.
Yeah. So what else is it that you want to know about if it's GMO?
Okay, stop there. Did you listen to her questions? Somebody was kind of rolling along and mentioned the word clean. And then even though they kept rambling, she stopped and said, well, what do you mean by cleanest? And then you notice her next question was open and started with a W, right? And people started talking again. And so there's a lot of information that was gained there. We learned what do people mean by cleanest food? There's a definition that's out there in Wikipedia, but that may not be what the marketplace really cares about. So in this case, this is a focus group. The other thing that happens in this focus group is she asked them to draw, what should this website be? Let me see if I can get to that, So, or if it should be a website, right? What would it look like? So again, the people in the room are telling the people who are listening what to build. Let's see.
You always do it on paper first. So for everybody, each piece of paper, we want to take a moment to clear the table. And as if you have time, you can draw what the first piece looks like, and then maybe draw what you think will happen next. The next page. Happen if you want to put something I just wrote it all down. Right now. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Does anybody want to paper? I just got pen, paper. I just want to say here right now, but if you really don't want to share or you don't like liver and the skin, best ways to store food. Like if you get produce, does everybody know you shouldn't put your tomatoes in the refrigerator right away? You should leave them on the counter. But not everybody knows that. Just things like that. In-season produce. Does everybody know what all the in-season produce is? No.
What's on sale?
What?
What's on sale?
I know what's So, I can do that for you. Recipes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, ideas. I mean, I could always use a new idea. Things are non-GMO, recycled packaging.
Okay. Now, what did we do? And that later on, and that was, a good 30 minutes later, we were asking, what is it that you want to see? And so here they were, a bunch of people who are food conscious and in foods and et cetera, some of them have dietary conditions in there that are medically driven in that room. Some of them were voluntarily, following diets. Some were foodies from the standpoint of cooking, and they love to cook. And they're telling us what to build, what they would use. So we didn't walk in, in this case, the truth of the matter is Dan, who was sitting there, the CTO, had built something, and later on in that focus meeting, he did show it to him, and he admitted, he stood right up front of the room and he said, "This is fantastic. I completely built the wrong thing." And they had built the beauty is that he built this amazing database, and we're still working on it. But the whole interface and everything about it was wrong. And luckily we hadn't invested too much money, but there was still a few $100,000 that went down the drain. And if they'd done this before they started building, they had all these pieces of paper in a meeting, and there's additional meetings that I'll talk about afterwards. And I'll show you some surveys that helped refine what to build. And even then we had to redo it. It's been redone a couple of times, and we're still working on it. Next is user testing. As you're building something, you want to get out there and constantly be getting feedback. Oops, sorry. Okay, just trying to get back to seeing you guys. So over here, this is a mock-up. This is not actually built. And we go out and we get 5 people, and there's a little, and we get them through usertesting.com. They can come on whenever they want. These are testers. And they fit in our early adopter group, and they go in and they listen to questions and have questions pop up, and then they show us and talk to us the whole time, telling us what they're seeing, what they like, what they don't like, what's working, what's not working, even though this is just a design comp, what they would like to see different, because there's questions that are there, and you can kind of get an open-ended questions. They're predisposed, but people could do it at their own. So you're combining a survey with an interview, because you can hear, but you still aren't completely interactive. And in this case, these are the people that we went to. The filters, they think the filters need to be more explicit. They would like desired automatic filtering. So in other words, if I say that I'm lactose intolerant and I'm also allergic to peanuts, there shouldn't be any recipes with peanuts, as an example, right? That's what they're saying there. They should automatically know that. So you get out there. You don't need a lot of people to learn what you need to learn. You don't want to just rely on the same 5 people, but you definitely don't want to go build it, spend the time and everything building it all, and then go back out there and have them tell you this. And then you got to go back. Well, you're never going to get off the ground because you can't fund that. So again, constantly going to the market. Any questions?
Yeah. What is the best, or I guess where is the best place to go to learn, I guess, like question etiquette and just like how to structure your questions and like navigate through a room and communicate with whoever your participants are to get what you want to know?
So I'll think about from the context of Cal Poly, right? First is the group you're in. There are some people have been doing this in the club, been there a few years and done some things. Secondly, you have the hatchery. So Sierra and Jose has a number of people. I'm one of the advisors and some of which, like Kurt Friedman and others, who are experts, like myself, in customer development, who can help coach you on the questions. The first thing we'll say is, who is it you're going after? What's your problem you're solving? What emotional need they have? Who's it we think you're going after? I'm going to drill into that first. And if we think you're going to the right place, then what is it? What's the objective? What are you really trying to learn? If it's, we want to validate that these people really have this problem. Then we start drilling into, we'll start with the W's, with the questions, and also teach you how to do an interview so that that sometimes you want to let them go down a rabbit hole and when not to, Because sometimes the rabbit hole is where you discover that what you started off looking to solve isn't really where the problem is. They give you a brand new one, and that's where a pivot comes, and you find a completely different business. Groupon, so many companies did not start, with what you end up seeing. Most of them have iterated 5 to 10 times before the general public, which is the rest of us, what we call the early majority, actually hear about it. And it all happens this way. Actually, to say like the beginning of Groupon, he failed completely a couple times. Did I answer your question, Armin?
Yeah.
All right. I know we're getting tight on time. I can stop, or I can show you just some stuff about everything food, like the funnel we built and the weight approach we took and stuff like that. You guys tell me. I can go after 7 if you want. Tell me if you want to just ask questions. Where do you want to go from here?
Does anyone have questions?
Oh, I have a small, where do you find the hatchery? Because I've heard people talk about it previous meeting.
So the hatchery is virtual now. It used to be across the hall from I think it was room 210 in the education building, but now it's virtual. So you reach out through, the club. Armin, you probably have the contact, Jose and Sierra's information, and then you'd reach out directly to them.
Yeah, we have all the contact info for CIA, and mainly Jose and Sierra. We always have contact with. So if anyone ever needs anything, feel free to reach out and we can provide that contact information. It's also should be posted in multiple areas like our social medias or the CIE page and the workbook that we send out. But yeah, feel free to reach out and I can contact you.
Thanks.
So if you want me to keep going, or if you have more questions, let's do that. Or I have probably maybe 4 more slides just kind of about the everything food story, and just give you an idea of some things. It's up to you guys what you want to do. Just tell me, Armin or whatever. You just tell me how you want to go.
Let's address any questions first, because once 7 hits, people will slowly start rolling out just for work purposes. Any questions?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go for it.
What was that question?
Oh, all right, I'll go ahead. Yeah, what did you find was the most valuable thing you took away, like the single most thing?
For everything food, actually, that's a great question, and maybe the best way to answer it is, we built we have 42,000 followers on Facebook, 50 something followers on Facebook and Instagram. That's not right. We have 18,000 people who've signed up. We've had millions of impressions, hundreds of thousands of engagements. You can see some of these stats here. Blah blah blah, right? And yet we hadn't found are really locked in on early adopters. We found people would come and use the site, but not people would come back over and over again. And we don't want them there every day or need them to as far as food, but it's at least weekly. And so the main piece of information, the main takeaway, Chris, to your answer is that we realized that the real opportunity are people who are in a chronic care management. What happens is the majority of people that go into the hospital have some sort of nutrition problem, which extends their stay and causes the length of time for recovery. So with that said, we realized we need to work with hospitals and the other side, school districts, to be able to provide better food, because everything to do with your health, we really believe in, and best way to put it is this slide here, food as medicine, or building better health through food. And it stays true to our cause, which is empowering people, but it's really about better health through food. And the whole focus and what we've taken away from all of this is we really got to be on the side of enabling improvements in health through food and getting into the institutions that are involved with health and with food. So the one main takeaway is from all of this effort and all of these different people is to keep narrowing our focus, that we are down to now, okay, that's still big. Whoops. I hate when I do that. Somehow I pressed I moved something. Give me a sec. And hopefully we're back. sooner or later. Oh, that was the last slide. That's why. Okay, so back to you. It came down to really listening, and also a great hire. We would, if we hadn't been doing all we wouldn't have done, the person that we went out to and hired recently in an executive role would not have joined the company. And she saw a different potential, and she had been part of Hungry Harvest. And I don't know if you're familiar with Hungry Harvest, but it's a food advocacy. It's a produce delivery service for food people that are in food deserts on the East Coast, clause-based. At the end of the day, what we found out and listened was that there's a really acute need for helping people to recover quicker and to maintain their recovery from hospitals through improving their health and helping them choose the right foods and get access to those right foods and getting those provided to them through government programs or hospital or insurance programs. And then they graduate having a platform where they can continue those new habits. And the second place is school lunch programs, moving them off the crappy cafeteria food into better foods and fresher foods, and enabling that. And we're going to have a pilot starting with that. So our focus went from tens of millions and tens of thousands of people that are already involved, and we have 500 to probably 1,000 people that hit the site a day, down to where we're going to be dealing with this very specific need where we can do make the most effect. We're going to help the restaurant industry. I mean, there's a whole story behind this. We're going to help the food farming industry, and we're going to make money all at the same time. We've really found a true opportunity, but it won't be proven until January when we get it out there. Did that answer your question, Chris? Cool.
All right. It seems like we are out of time. But if anyone else has any more questions, feel free to stick around. If anyone has to go, have an amazing week. Thanks for coming out. I know it's around that time of the quarter where things are just like kind of dragging along.
Hey,
so
what do you mean by that? Just kidding.
I mean, hey.
Oh, no offense taken. I'm just joking.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm joking around too. Well, yeah. Stay connected, everyone, through our Instagram, social media handles, website. The meeting will be posted on the YouTube channel if you want to come back and check it out. We covered quite a lot today. I like a lot. Customer dev is a big topic. So yeah, feel free to stick around if you have any questions related to anything, or if you just want to chat and get some stress off during week 7. So yeah, thank you so much, Professor Lieberman, for coming on such late notice.
I know there was a lot of info. If you want to stick around and distill it down to your specific thing, I can help you do that.